Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is season 6 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. Tim's is stacking its lunch and dinner menu with the launch of the new Supreme Stack Sandwich. It features a tall stack of delicious seasoned steak, double smoked bacon. Of course, you've got caramelized onions, mozzarella, Monterey Jack cheeses, and a creamy peppercorn sauce, all on a potato bun. And Ray, as we talked about last week on the Rain Dregs podcast, I'm in that zone of where, I don't have a whole lot of time to meal prep here. We're right in the final stretch, right? We've got the draft on Friday as we're recording this episode of Rain Dregs on Thursday. Saturday, day 2 of the draft is always busy. And then you've got July 1st free agency right around the corner. So as I head into the studio, same old routine, man. I'm going to get that medium coffee, 1 milk, and a Supreme Stack sandwich. That's what I got going my way.
Are you a drive-through guy or?
Yeah. Okay. Always drive-through. Always. Yeah.
Please this is a public service announcement. Be decisive when you go through the drive-through, please.
Yeah. Like you're saying, there's hold on.
There's two boards.
Maybe not.
There's 2 boards. Look, order, move. It's really simple. So I hope when you're ordering the stack, you're not thinking about, should I add this or maybe order, move, go. I like it.
Well, and you're right, because even when I go out for dinner with people, look, you like what you like. And if you're ordering a pizza, as an example, in this case, Supreme Stack, I know what's on the sandwich. I've just described this delicious sandwich. I don't need to say, hold the onions. Hey, are there jalapenos on that? All of it? No, I'm not doing any of it. I'm taking the sandwich and I'm moving on. That bugs me when people do that. I understand you like what you like, but I will not be doing that. Very decisive, Ray. The advice
I like that. I hope you're decisive today. You got something for us? Like anything big going on? It's maybe some news.
Well, we have lots going on in headlines.
Any news though? New news?
Yeah, well, new news.
Newish.
Well, newish would be, just after midnight Eastern last night, right? That was the Peterka trade from the Buffalo Sabres to Utah. And then subsequently you had JJ Peterka signing the extension with Utah. So why don't we start headlines there and break it down for me. So Buffalo sends a 23-year-old winger to Utah. Lots of promise in JJ Peterka, I think, anyway. All right, so they get a right-shot defenseman coming back. Now, we're going to talk about Bowan Byram in just a minute, but Kevin Adams of the Buffalo Sabres, in conversations around Byram, had to have a right-shot defenseman coming back as part of that deal. Well, he gets a right-shot D-man in Kesselring coming back from Utah, and he also gets Josh Doan, who, by all accounts, he looks like he's going to be a very honest and decent NHL player, right? He's still young. He's 23. In Kesselring, he's 25, right? So you get 2 pieces for one, and Peterka going back the other way. So just on face value, do you like this trade for both? Should Buffalo have gotten more for JJ Peterka? What do you think?
They might have been able to get a bigger name player, perhaps, for Peterka, but I don't think people have any idea how good Kesselring is. First of all, he's large and he covers a lot of space. One of the complaints about Buffalo, and he's kind of he'll play really with a firmness that Buffalo misses. The Sabres have been criticized, rightfully so, for being small. They're a small group. They don't have a lot of bite to their game, and I think Kesselring and Doan, to a lesser extent, will address that. I think Doan's a bottom 6 guy, certainly at this point. But he, I guess the problem from the Buffalo side publicly is that, other than being Shane Doan's son, people don't know a lot about the players. But that doesn't mean it's not a good trade for them. I like Kesselring a lot. I thought Doan had a nice splash early, and then he settled into that I got to figure the league out stage.
Yeah.
But I think he's a legit guy too. So I think this is a better return than people might think on first blush. Peterka was not going to play there anymore. I did a couple of games last year, and just his play is. I mean, you can see like the guy he can skate, he can drive the play to the net, he can shoot, he can score. His emotional connection to the game was gone in Buffalo. So I'm standing there and I'm watching him play. He comes in off the ice, sits down at the end of the bench, half turns his body, so he's watching the play, but the bench is to his right, if you can picture that. His back is half turned to the bench for all of his night. And then he would be up, and then he'd go on the ice and come back. And I'm like, man, it's like his connection to this is all kind of shattered. And that does happen. I think to sign a 5-year extension, which clearly was one of his priorities, to get a start with a team that is clearly on the rise in Utah and exciting and aggressive offensively. I think this is a really good buy for Utah. I guess you get what you get. Like, you could hold on maybe if you're Buffalo trying to get more, but I think that their return is better than what people think. Is it going to be enough? It'll depend, I think, on what Doan becomes, because Kesselring already is a top 4 guy. He's a top 4 right shot D. He proved that last year, and they needed that. And that also opens the door, as we're going to get into whenever with Bowan Byram, that opens the door for a secondary trade that brings you something else.
And there are teams who definitely have interest in Bowan Byram that, I guess you can be critical of the trade if you need to be critical of the trade. I think you've explained it well as to why Buffalo would move Peterka now. Some of the critics would say, well, okay, but you could have managed it differently. I mean, if Alan Walsh finds an offer sheet with JJ Peterka, fine, you match it. I mean, that's the risk that goes into those things.
There's one other portion to this. I don't know if it's how much a factor it might be. Is the dollars in this trade favor Buffalo quite significantly? Sure. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Like, so you say you just match the offer sheet. Maybe they don't want to match the offer sheet.
Maybe not. And
so that became, you're in a position where that's the best we can do. The one thing it does feel like in Buffalo is they got a bunch of little brush fires that they're trying to put out all at the same time. You get one put out and another one pops up, and they need to solidify their roster, solidify a vision of what they're trying to get to be, because my goodness, you cannot ask these people to keep coming to games year after year after year. I mean, what are they? They're at 14 now, right?
Yeah.
Like there has to be a vision that you can sell, and I don't know that they've done that. I don't know that. I don't think anybody can really pinpoint what the Sabres are, and so that's why, like, this next trade might be really significant for them as well.
Yes, and the reason I said there would be smiles on the faces of at least a few of the managers with interest in Bowan Byram is because the ask for Byram as part of the return was that right shot D. Okay, well, you get
that they didn't have the other teams.
Some of them didn't have it, or if they have it, they didn't want to trade it because now they're looking for a right shot D. So the list of teams that I would look at here. And I'm sure there are more teams with interest than the clubs I'm going to mention, but you've got Vegas, very keen on Bowan Byram, Mitch Marner. I mean, Callum McCrimmon is in one. Like, Vegas is going to be fascinating to see how this all unfolds in the days
ahead.
Always are. Your buddy Kenny Holland, the Los Angeles Kings, like the look of Bowan Byram. They do. And you could envision him on that power play, right? I think for the most part, they use 5 forwards in LA, don't they?
Yeah.
They
do. They can help it. I mean, Doughty's not that guy anymore. Yeah. And maybe the young guys aren't quite there yet. They're looking a little more they right, like the Kings want to be a little more aggressive in the way that they play. Byram is that.
Yeah. St. Louis has interest. Vancouver, I think that interest has been consistent. It was there early, and I think to some degree it remains. So I'll just keep Vancouver in the discussion. I'm not saying that they're a principal point. Colorado would like to look at him coming back. And that's interesting. They wouldn't be afraid. You're smirking.
It's like that's like your girlfriend in high school, and then you break up, and then she starts dating somebody else, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I'd like to get back together, and there may be interest or not, right? Because the Casey Middlestat trade clearly did not work for them. That trade was Byram and Middlestat. That didn't work for Colorado at all.
Yeah. So again, let's just keep them in the conversation. Philadelphia was hot originally, then less so, but still interested. And I'd put Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs in there too. I mean, Tree is always in on everything. How he would make that work, don't know. But again, there's a team, Toronto, that would like the look of the Peterka trade because then they don't have to include a right shot D going back the other way. So that's the cast. Is there, of the teams that I mentioned, is there one that kind of leaps off the page that maybe intrigues you the most? Vegas, LA, St. Louis, Van, Colorado, Philly, Toronto?
Well, I would say LA and Vegas.
Yeah.
Do we have, even though they shoot different hands, do we have any update really on Alex Petrangelo's health and going into next year? That's one of their 6D. There seems to be a gap with Nick Hague. So you're looking about a couple of the 6 pillars that they built their defense around that maybe they have to think about differently. That's why Vegas really intrigues me. And so that kind of makes sense.
It does. And look, if Buffalo still needs a defenseman coming back, well, maybe that's where Nick Hague has, some value, and you sweeten you're not getting Bowan Byram for Nick Hague. Like there's got to be more and more coming back. But again, McCrimmon is near genius when it comes to those sorts of things. As for Petro, that's an interesting one. I'm not going to get into the wild speculation around this guy, and it is wild, some of it, other than to say that, I would say his health is uncertain at this point. So if he can't go, depending on that level of health, you at worst have an LTIR option there if you're Vegas, and maybe they just don't know that yet. But that's kind of some of the feedback. So Bowan Byram, you're right, is the next domino to fall in terms of Buffalo. And you wonder how quickly, again, recording here on Thursday, Friday at the draft, even though it's decentralized, it's different. The managers are in their offices, in their home cities. That doesn't stop them from being active. And in fact, in some cases, they're almost more active, right? Because they're invested in the draft. They're managing it virtually, but that does free them up a little bit, I think, doesn't it? To continue on with these conversations amongst themselves, with a focus primarily on trade and that activity.
Well, I think whether they were together or not, the focus this year was going to be more on trades than the draft. Just with, not that the draft's not the important part of this weekend, but with next week's free agency and everybody fighting over the same 12 players. I don't think that people understand, like, the way the draft kind of works is that the GM kind of oversees everything, but this is the head scouts time. Like he's the one, those scouts are putting that list together, that they're the ones that see the players multiple times. The GMs don't. And so their time now is player movement, trades, free agents. What do we think of our place? Can we move that pick? Should we move that pick? Like, all those things are what the GM does. So whether they're together or not, they've all got a phone or multiple phones, and man, they must be busy right now because there's a lot of stuff kind of floating around.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll get into some of the dribs and the drabs and things that have already happened, including today out of Dallas. Jamie Benn extends 1 year. Look, he's approaching the end of his career. 1 year, $4 million deal, but it's related to bonuses. So 1 million flat salary and then 3 million in attainable bonuses, games played, all of that. And the Dallas Stars are also closing in on naming their new head coach. And it sounds like it's a 2-horse race at this point, right? It's either Glenn Gulutzan of the Edmonton Oilers or Neil Graham, who's with the Texas Stars, the American League affiliate of the Dallas Stars. So Dallas is kind of quietly, maybe not so quietly, putting the pieces of their team moving forward together.
Jamie Benn was a 5th-round pick, right? He's 35
done okay,
years
huh?
old. Yeah. And so the time where he can be a front end of the roster player is, that time's gone. And the role that they'll probably ask him to play in probably is more commensurate with the salary he's going to make here. He'll be a bottom end guy, play on the 4th line, play on your power play, and you're looking at 12 and 13 minutes. What's interesting with the coach is that Jim Nill would know both of these guys really well. Even though he's in an interview process with both. I mean, obviously, Graham coaches the American League team, and Glenn Gulutzan was there before. So there's a familiarity with both. So I don't know if that makes it easier, if it would make it more difficult, but he knows both of them quite well. And I don't have a feel either way there, but they've got some moves to make in Dallas too. And they're not done by a long shot.
And I think this would matter. The familiarity, you're right. I mean, that's obvious. You always want to surround yourself with people you're comfortable with, you're like-minded thinkers, philosophically and otherwise. But would this attract you if you were a GM or owner, just the work that Gulutzan has done, especially with 2 of the best players, period, in McDavid and Draisaitl, and, how entwined he is with those 2 guys. There are others, of course. He manages the power play and other things, but that's what he's noted for, really, is working closely with McDavid and Draisaitl.
See, as you're talking through that doesn't matter as much for me because we don't have McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, we don't have players of that caliber.
That's true. Yeah.
What I'm interested in is how did they work, and when they shaped their lines, where they, how they'd always have 2 guys together and they'd move the right wingers around, or they'd put Draisaitl and McDavid together and they'd take them apart. I'd want to know his thoughts on that. Like, I want a coach in today's game that's got a nimble mind behind the bench, that is able to match and mix a little bit, because I think right now teams that are just roll out the same lines, they're very few and far between, because there's just lineups are not built like that anymore. And I think the coach needs to be able to adjust in game as much as he's going to adjust strategically between games.
We'll get into a couple of trades that happened earlier this week, but the focus is primarily on the draft, the trades that are going to happen, and then what does free agency look like? And we've spent a lot of time on this podcast, talking about Marner, Bennett, Marchand, Aaron Ekblad, the top of class here in 2025. I still feel like Bill Zito is going to work his magic. Maybe not keep all 3, but 2 of the 3, the 2 forwards in Bennett and Marchand. If he can't, and Marchand is the one that ultimately leaves, can you envision Brad Marchand in a Toronto Maple Leafs uniform? Because I can. And I know that the interest that the Leafs have is significant. And I think that Marchand likes the idea of playing for Craig Berube if it doesn't play out in Florida. What do you think?
Okay, so I couldn't picture Marchand in a Florida uniform.
Yeah.
Right? He played so if you're asking about the fit, I see where it is. The one thing I would say about Marchand, I wouldn't ever doubt him, because it seems like that's just another piece of fuel, right? He takes it all in, and he's a 3rd-round pick that's played his way to the cusp of the Hall of Fame. And I think anyway, and we saw the playoff he had. Now, if you bring him in, I think this is a free agency mistake that gets made year after year after year. He was playing on a third line with two very good players who probably should not be third line players, in Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell. Their line beat up on third lines throughout the playoffs. They're able to match against other teams' top lines. Like, it was almost like a bully matchup that the Panthers had. Like, they were, and for Brad, like, you're able to take advantage of that game after game after game. His smarts, he skated better than I remember him skating, and I think that's pretty critical too, to keep in mind. But if you bring him to Toronto or to somewhere else, and you're going to play him on a first line, and expect that rate of scoring, I think you're looking in the wrong place, because he didn't get younger, right? He's still, as the seasons go on, it gets harder and harder and harder. I do see him playing with very good players, but I think to consider him a 35 goal guy or something like that, I think a team might go, oh, gee, I thought he was going to get a little bit more for me. Not the heart, not the work, not the intangibles that he brings to your team, but like, if you're envisioning him as a left winger for Austin Matthews, then that's a completely different depth of defenseman he's going to play against, and you have to acknowledge it's not going to be as easy.
Just clean up some loose ends here, because we just talked about Jamie Benn and the 1-year extension with the $1 million flat salary, $3 million in bonuses. The bonuses, as I suggested, Chris Johnson has clarified here. So it's $500,000 each for 20 games, 30 games, 50 games, and 60 games played. So $500,000 for each of those plateaus, $500,000 for a round 3 win, and then $500,000 for a Stanley Cup win. So kind of creative, right? Incentive there.
The first two seem pretty doable, 20 and 30, right? And then where does it go to, 50?
Hold on, I just X'd out here. I want to say 60. Hold on. Got too much stuff going on, right? Yeah, so don't worry. That's 20, 30, 50, and 60 games played. Yeah.
So if he's healthy enough and has a decently productive run here, like, 15 to 20 goals somewhere in there, and why can't he do that? So that's $2 million in bonuses if you show up to work 60 times. You got to be healthy enough, right? You got to be healthy enough to do it. That'd be okay. Kind of
Evander. Oh, geez, I wish. Evander Kane traded to the Vancouver Canucks. So your first reaction when you learned that, okay, Evander Kane had been traded and Edmonton retained $0. Just good old-fashioned cap relief. What do you think?
My first reaction was I was really surprised, because, like everything else, I don't know anything that's going on, right? So, like in Vancouver. So I wouldn't have, I don't know, I never put those two pieces together. So, and the reason I never put them together, like it felt like Kane was going to be traded. Like he was going to be the guy they were going to try and move out of there along with Arvidsson as they create cap room for Draisaitl's extension and Bouchard's new contract, right? Like those felt like where they had to go first. And I never even though Vancouver's looking for a couple of forwards, I never really put that together because, well, I just never put it together. Not because he can't play, but because there's always so much noise around Evander. But if you look at the noise, and I guess this is what they're counting on, is that the noise was more in the past than it was in the last couple of years. Now, this past year, there could have been no noise because he didn't play, right? He didn't play all year, and then he played in the playoffs. And but he can't. He had what? He had 25 goals a year and a half or 2 years ago. When he played, and that's what they're looking for here. He's big and he can skate and he's physical. The noise around him, that really is the question. I mean, that's really the question with Evander. It's been that way for him for a long, long time. And if he can just play, then I think it's for a 4th round pick. That's probably a pretty decent buy for them. Here's the other thing. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Most of the guys you're going to sign in free agency are going to be 3 and 4 year deals for players that you might not really fall in love with, but you're like, we got to have somebody. I think there's going to be 15 of those deals over the next week or so. So you get a player that wants to stay in the game, wants to keep playing. He's got 1 year to do it. He's going to get top 6 minutes. He's going to get power play time. Like, the chance is there for him. The opportunity's there for him. And that's clearly what they're betting on.
So you still see the need in Vancouver up the middle, though, right? And
sure.
How are they getting that piece? And that's, honestly, as an insider, that's what we struggle with, because beyond looking at the free agent class.
Oh, sorry, Luca just popped in here.
Beyond looking at the free agent class, and when you're shopping in that aisle for number 2 centers,
it's crowded.
It's pretty crowded. It's pretty crowded. I mean, what sort of bait are they using? How are they pulling this off via trade?
Well, I guess one thing that does happen is, you set an internal cap on a player like Pius Suter, who's probably a 3+ center, not a legit number 2 center. You set an internal cap out him, and then as you get closer to free agency and all the managers are talking to the other players and agents and however it goes before the July 1st here, I mean, seriously, like, there's going to be all these deals announced on July 1st. Do you think they started negotiating at midnight? Stop. And so
hence the warning, by the way, from the NHL on tampering.
I mean, it just seems unfathomable that that's the way it goes. So anyways, they start talking and getting a sense of what other players make. Maybe Pius Suter looks better to you at a number you wouldn't have gone to a week ago.
Right.
And I think that's probably the case because, as I said earlier, everybody's fighting over the same 10 players. My daughter-in-law's running around chasing Luca here. She can't get a handle on him. And it's hilarious. He keeps coming to the door and he's like looking in, like he's got
what's going on? Who's he talking to?
So, so anyways, Luca would be a good bid in about 18 years. But so I think that's how you look at Suter first, or not first, you look at Suter again. And then you look, they seem willing about their 15th pick in the draft. They've got a bucket load of young defensemen that a couple of them just won the Calder Cup with the Abbotsford Heat, and congratulations to them. Abbotsford Canucks, rather, that have just won. You've got Willander and Mancini and Kudratsev. Like there's starting to be a lot of players that maybe somebody can be in the mix, but that's how you attack it. And what the other teams have, or what the other teams are willing to move. Don't forget, if I want your second line center, or a guy I think is a second line center off your team, you're like, well, yeah, but now I got a hole.
I need a center back. Yeah.
So it becomes real complicated. The other part to this too is, and I mean, this was a question when they acquired Philip Hedl, is Hedl going to be healthy to play?
Right.
And there comes a point where he's just not. But everything that I've heard is that he's at the point he's ready to play. And that's another center that you have. And man, everybody would love to have Barkov and Bennett, or McDavid and Draisaitl to that point. Yeah. But you just don't get those players, and you don't get them in a lot of cases unless you draft them. Yeah. Right? Of the 4 guys I mentioned, only one came by trade, and that was Bennett.
Yeah. We'll probably talk about the Thatcher Demko extension. I mean, it's not done yet. There's still ongoing discussions between the Canucks and his camp. It does seem encouraging that they're going to get something done on a multi-year deal. Teams basically have pulled away from the trade thoughts around the league. Just, number one, the price initially was crazy high, as you would expect, as it should be. And the focus now, of course, from Vancouver and again, Demko's perspective is trying to get something done. So we can shelve that for maybe our next episode. July 2nd, by the way, right after July 1st in the frenzy. Also wanted to get your your thoughts on Trevor Zegras to Philadelphia earlier this week. I don't know why I chuckle. I mean, he's saying all the right things now, but I'm thinking to myself, okay, hold on a minute. You got Keith Jones in management. I don't think he's a Jonesy type of player. Rick Tocchet, the new head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. But then I'm reminded of the success that Tocchet had with Phil Kessel and others when the Penguins were doing the good things that they were doing with him as an assistant coach. So is it worth the risk in Trevor Zegras giving what you paid, which wasn't much, and the fact that he only has one more year left on his contract?
Yes, I think 100% it's worth the risk. Here's the thing. Zegras is a fun-loving guy. He loves to joke around. If he thinks that there's any joke or giggle that he has that Keith Jones doesn't have, he's mistaken. He's mistaken. Jonesy will be, like, honestly, Jonesy's on that case. I mean, to a certain extent, the personality with Keith Jones, who's the president, because we're leaving out Daniel Briere here too, right? He's the guy that made the deal. So
right.
I think I think Keith has a really good chance of understanding what Zegras is about as a person. I think one of the biggest mischaracterizations of Rick Tocchet is that he's just like, he can't accept outside the box players, and that I find that's wrong. That's not.
It is wrong. Yeah,
that's not what he is. Now, can you get to Zegras to get him to play with 1 foot inside the line, right? Because he's got high risk to his game. I think he's sort of slowly getting it. It kind of almost feels like it. I think this last injury he had, and then the surgery he had that took him out of a lot of the season. He seemed to come back with a more of a willingness to play the way that he has to play, and that's just it. It's one of these things that, like, I've become really black and white with this. He either will or he won't, and it's a 1-year bet. It's not like you've got a 6-year bet with the kid that you sign in free agency. This goes back to teams are going to sign players, and in 18 months go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? We got 2.5 years left of this guy. Like, that's going to happen in this free agent class. And Philly doesn't have to do it. Ryan Poehling's a legit NHL player, a couple of draft picks, which they have 1,500 of them. So they're fine with the risk to this. I mean, maybe the team surprised me a little bit because I don't know why it surprised me, but it just did. But I think Trevor Zegras is a good bet for 1 year. I absolutely do.
Good. All right. Let's wrap up headlines on this edition of Ray and Dregs with some of the off-ice stuff here, right? So we know that the NHL Board of Governors met yesterday, being Wednesday. There were a number of things discussed. An expansion update, which really just acknowledged that Atlanta is still right there, very eager. There were other gestures, prospective owners, groups, all of that. So not a timeline on when the next wave of expansion should be expected, just an update on the interest. CBA, the new collective bargaining agreement, should be out as late as tomorrow. So, man, we're drinking out of a fire hose in the media world on Friday with everything going on the trade front, expected, the new CBA, and then on top of that, just first round of the draft. I mean, it's going to be an interesting day. But I did want your thoughts on something else that was discussed. And Pierre LeBrun was quick to get on his megaphone, which is Twitter, to acknowledge that he's been reporting on this for some time. And that was discussion on adding 2 regular season games. So pushing the regular season to 84 games rather than 82. And the trade-off, the exchange would be you reduce the preseason, the exhibition season, down to as little as 4 games. I mean, as a player, wouldn't you be in favor of that? I think you would, wouldn't you? Would it matter?
Well, okay, so here's where it matters. I mean, I'm in favor because that's more hockey-related revenue that goes more into the pot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what I'm in favor of. You reduce the exhibition schedule. Most guys aren't playing those games anyway. Right? Like, you're not playing them.
Not the big boys. You're right.
No. Yeah. So now you at most, almost every player in the league will play one of those 2 games. So, but the exhibition game does not equal a regular season game, just like a regular season game doesn't equal a playoff game. So right. you get 2 more games to work. What I wouldn't like is, I looked at my schedule this year and it was brutal. Like it was I'm telling you, Dregs, every coach we talk to pregame bitches about the schedule.
Always.
Man, we got 11 games in 19 days. And then you go talk to the other guys like, yeah, we're in a bad spot here. We got 8 and 13. And you're like, so now you're adding 2 more games to it.
Yeah.
Like, where are these games going to go? Can you imagine what next year's schedule looks like when they shut down for 3 Olympics weeks in February? Yeah. Oh man. Like, so I don't necessarily love it. I would prefer, if the extra games were going to be had, I would prefer they would be, and we don't have time, or I don't want to get into like the whole playoff play in 7 to 10, play a 2 out of 3 to get in. To me, those are big revenue games. Those are big interest games. These are 2 games in the middle of November, and they're just 2 more games on the schedule. I'm not as much in favor of it, I think, as somebody might be.
Yeah, and it is for the 26-27 season, but there's always going to be a break in the schedule, right? It's either World Cup of Hockey or it's the Olympics. Like there's always something going on. And as far as expansion is concerned, I can't name the source. It's an ownership source who sent me a text, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, great. And this is a guy who would benefit from the $2 billion in an expansion fee. It's like, all right, so what are we going to go to 34 teams and then it's 36, but yet we won't expand our number of playoff teams? Not happy about that.
Okay, so I've got one other thing that I'm sure he'll talk about at some point is, we're coming up into free agency. There are already teams begging for quality and depth, and now we're going to add more teams to it. So you're going to fight more and more. This is a good time to be a player, I'm telling you.
Oh, no kidding.
You got feet. We want you.
You don't have to skate backwards. You can't turn left or stop on that side. No problem.
That's all right.
Everything's fine.
How many teams look and they're like, God, we need goaltending depth. Where are the goalies coming from?
That's a good question.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there's lots of challenges beyond the most obvious ones that we see.
No. All right, sir. Well done. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons. We're going to skip along here, but again, remind all of our viewers and those who follow us closely on Ray and Dreg, so we're going to wrap up season 6 on July 2nd. That's
where are you going on the 3rd?
No. I've got a very important charity golf tournament, the Cobbs Classic, to support young Jacob Winterton, who's in a cancer battle. He's doing very, very well, but there's a golf tournament on the 4th of July I must attend. So then the morning of July 5th, we will have the truck all packed up, Tiny in the back, and heading west. That's
Cabbage bound.
Anyway.
Cabbage bound. Yeah, boy.
So you're good for July 2nd. Everything's set. Final episode of the year.
Yeah, I think we can pull that one off. I will be going to the under 16 provincial soccer championships. Reese, our young guy, is going to be playing there, and then on July 6th, Riley goes to school. So we've got
That's a tough day, that one.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one,
right?
And absolutely. And as the days get closer, I can see he's getting a little more excited. Starting to picture what it might look like. And as he gets more excited, I get a little more nostalgic. And it'll be a tough day, but an exciting day for him.
Well, not to pile on though, but young Reese, as you've just identified, isn't that far behind here, bud.
Yeah.
The empty nest thing for you and Cammie may not be that far away.
It's not that far, but we'll enjoy while he's here. I do know he's going to be like, would you two leave me alone? No, you're the only one here.
Yes. Sorry. Come and snuggle. Let's snuggle on the couch and watch a movie.
Like, beat it, would you? Yeah, come on. So,
all right, buddy. Well, it's going to be a busy
everybody
weekend.
July 2nd.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, we'll see everyone July 2nd. Enjoy this week. It's always a fun one with lots of good stuff for the hockey fan. And Thanks for listening again.
Yep. And thank you to our sponsors who continue to support the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons, thank you. And thank you to Acon. Until next time, our final episode. As Ray says, enjoy the weekend. Lots to talk about on July 2nd. Stay safe, everybody.